With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yoma Daf Yud Ches. We're going to be starting by the Mishnah towards the top of the Amid that will continue to speak more about the preparation that the Kohen Gadol underwent during the first Mishnah that spoke about the Shivas Yamim, the 7 days of sequestration, the 2 days of Perisha. And then, amongst the 7 days itself, we're going to differentiate between the first 6 and something unique that only went into effect on Erev Yom Kippurim. And we will be speaking about the concern, which is something that happened a lot more b'poil than today, is that when people slept, it was more common to have a nocturnal seminal emission. That's the whole thing we learned in the beginning of the Masechta. We don't want the Kohen Gadol to have a Re'iyas Keri on Yom Kippur, because then he will become tummy. Now we had a backup Kohen Gadol, but we're trying to prevent from that happening. So both foods that make people sleepy will not be given to him on Erev Yom Kippur, because we did not want for the Kohen Gadol to sleep the night of Yom Kippur. And by the way, many Yidden today, if they're able to, they stay in shul, and some of them try not even to sleep, to such a inyan, not to sleep, to be awake for the whole 25 hours of Yom Kippur. Also, people that are unable to stay awake, many people don't go home, they sleep in the shul. We're not going into the dinim of how can you sleep in a shul. I know Rabbi Marlowe never went home, he would sleep in his office upstairs. But that all comes, that idea, really, the Kohen Gadol would stay up the whole night. So foods that make you sleepy, and foods, there are certain foods that they produce, or they stimulate the body's production of zera. And these are foods that the Kohen Gadol also will not eat on Erev Yom Kippur. And that's going to also link us, mamish, the same inyan regarding the Zav. So a Zav is someone who has some sort of gonorrheal discharge, some sort of hoitzoa zera. And the first of such a seminal emission, the first re'iyah of a Zav, is going to make him only into a balkeri. But if this person has a second one, either on the same day or on the next day, if that emission was not provoked by external stimuli, which would mean overeating, which would mean eating certain foods that are mareh b'zera, if that was not there, then he would be real zav, because he had 2 re'iyos. And then he would have to count shivas nekiyim, and then the mikvah would only be allowed to go into a mayim chayim mikvah. If he would have 3 of such emissions, and again here the second and the third may not come about because of external stimuli, then not only will he have to have shivas nekiyim and go to a mayim chayim, but he'll have to bring the karbanos of a zav on his 8th day. So that will be the link. There also we find topics about foods that are mareh b'zera and a lot more. Chavra, let us start with the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah. This is again during the Shivas, right? The Shivas Yamim, the name of the Pedic during the 7 days of Perisha. Masrolei Zekenim, that they would give over to him elders. Miyut of elders is 2, that means at least 2 elders. From Miziknei Bezdin, from the Sanhedrin. Why would they be there? Says the Mishnah, Koren Lefana v'Seder Hayoim. They would teach him really all the intricacies of the Avodah, i.e., and under the Verter, they would read the Psukim in Parshas Achrei Mos. But they wouldn't just read the Chumash to him. They would read it and they would teach the oral Torah what every step means. And v'oimrim loi, Ishi Kohen Gadol. After he listened, Kra'ata beficha, read it with your own mouth. They would make him review it Baal Peh, but Baal Peh. Baal Peh means, the Rebbe said Baal Peh means by heart. Just to know, the Rebbe said a few times that here the English has something that we have to learn from. Because the Lashon HaKodesh Baal Peh, Peh means mouth. In English you say by heart. There's a lot of statements of the Rebbe by the 4 questions that he would ask people this in English, because he wanted them to say that they'll say it with their heart. The Rebbe once said that. Not only by heart, says Baal Peh of Oisem Venig, aber mitten Herzen. But anyways, back over here. Kreata beficha. Here also means read it with your mouth and with your heart. When a person enunciates something, when you teach something, when you say something, you understand it better. It gives you more clarity. Why? Why should you repeat it? Because Shema Shachachta, because maybe you forgot a step. Or Shema Loi Lomadata. And the Gemara is going to jump. Oy Gevalt, can there be a Kohen Gadol that Loi Lomadata? And that's what we learned just a few daf ago, that sadly, Bisman Bayasheni, there was such a Metzias of Kohanim Gedolim that were ignoramus, that didn't know. Right. So Atkan is every day of the 7 days. Now we're going to learn about a special detail that only was activated on Erev. Erev Yom Kippurim, Shacharis, Mamidim Oisam B'Shar Mizrach. They would already stand him in the Easter gate, which is Shad Niknar. Umavirim Lefanav, and they would bring in front of him all of the animals that he will use on Yom Kippur. And they were parim. We're going to learn all these dinim, God willing, here in the Masechta. And the Elim and the Kavasim. It's interesting. There was another very important animal karban nois that are not mentioned, which is actually why the day is called Yom HaKippurim. Kippurim from the day of a lottery. Pur, which are the two Seidim. The Gemara is going to wear the Seidim. There were he-goats. One went Lashem, one went Lazazel. The Mishnah doesn't mention this. But the Parim and the Elam and the Kavasim, and they brought the animals, it's already like hands-on learning. So he's not just saying the words by heart. He can already identify, this animal, I'm going to do this. That animal, I'm going to do that. Kadeshi Makir, he should recognize and he should become familiarized. V'ragel b'avoid. Nakoda. Next din, Kol Shivas Hayomim. Lo Yehoyim Moinim Imenu Maichol Mishnah. They didn't hold back any type of food, any type of drink. Gesund hate, but Erev Yom HaKippurim. Im Chashecha. Well, details. What exactly is Im Chashecha? From what time in the PM? But whatever Im Chashecha means, there already Lo Yehoyim Manicha Moisel Lechol Harba. You can't eat a lot. Why? Shema mipnei shehamaichol mevi esashina. Because eating excessive amounts of foods makes you tired. Right? The Shabbos shluff after cholent. And why do we care if we'll get tired? So Rashi says, that's the word. We don't want, no, not Rashi, but the other Rishonim say that we don't want for him to sleep at all because he might have a seminal emission. Says the Gemara, Bishlam Hashem Shachach L'chaya. We're not excited, but that's something that we can relate to. People learn and people forget. Ella Shema Loy Lamad. Do we appoint a Kohen I'll never learn? It says in Parshas Emor that the Hakoyin Hagodol Me'echav. End of quote. Say Chazal, Hagodol Me'echav means Sheyehei Godol Me'echav. He has to be superior, greater than all of his brother Kohanim in everything. B'koyach in strength, b'noyin in beauty, b'chachma and in wisdom, b'oishen and in wealth. And furthermore, that if the Kohen Gadol doesn't have this superiority. Now, what are we talking about? We're speaking about financial. We're speaking about oishen. They mamish have to go into. They have to make sure that the bank account number or whatever number of the Kohen Gadol is greater than his brethren's. They have to give him from their wealth to make him the wealthiest. And Talmud Hakohen Hagadol me'echav gadleyu mishel echav. It's the men. He's not only greater he's greater because he received from them. The Satmar Rebbe Rabbi Yoel said, well, hold on, money you can share. But what about koyach? What about noi? What about chachma? What do you do with that? So Hatege answered that whoever is wealthier, is more handsome, is stronger, and is wiser. That's the way of the world. Okay, bite it over here. So Amar Rabbi Yosef loy kasha. Indeed, Khan, the pasuk that we quoted that the Kohen Gadol was the greatest was with Mikdash Rishon. But Mikdash Rishon, a Kohen Gadol, we were not afraid that he never learned it. We were afraid that he forgot it. And sadly, our Mishnahs were Mikdash Sheni, and we just had this above about the tremendous turnover. Here we're saying the Amar Rab Asi. We're speaking about how Kohanim Gedolim had their office acquired through bribery. That tarkiva is trei kav. I know you think trei kav means 2 kav. No, tarkiva means 3 kav. Trei and the kav. That's the lashon. 3 kav. Did dinari of golden dinarin. Ayale Marta bas Baisus. We learned about Marta during the Churban Bayesheni. So she married Yeshua ben Gamla. She wanted for her husband to be the Kohen Gadol. So she gave to Yanai Malka 3. Imagine kavim of golden coins. Al the oikmei Yeshua ben Gamla b'chana ravreve. Now it's not just to know Yeshua ben Gamla was not, God forbid, a tzeduki. He was not unworthy, but Yeshua ben Gamla had colleagues that were more worthy. And also, it just indicates that it was acquired through bribery. There's an important little tosfos because we learn in Kedushin about the evil of Yanai HaMelech. But that Yanai HaMelech was not living at this time. It just points out that there were various Yanai HaMelechs, and obviously this was Bisman, Rabbi Yeshua ben Gamla. This was Bisman, Marta ben Baisus, And that's not the Yanei HaMelech that killed all Chachmei Yisrael. That Yanei HaMelech himself became the Kohen Gadol. Anyways, back over here. Erev Yom Kippurim Shachris v'chulei. Frek the Gemara. Oh, Tana, we learned in a Braisa that what animals did they bring to the Kohen Gadol? The Braisa mentions all of the animals. Af Hasi'irim, also the he-goats. Question is, V'tana didon my Tama Litana Se'irim? Answers the Gemara, Kivin the Al Chet Ka'asi. The Se'irim come to atone for sin, to the sin of Klal Yisrael. So Chal Shadate, if he sees Oy Gewalt that there is sin that has to be atoned for, he's going to go into a despair. He's going to be Marish Chayredik. So therefore they didn't even bring it up. So hold on, what about the par? The par also came for his sin and for the Kohanim sins. Iyachi Parnami al Chetu da Asi. Gemara gives a Gewaldige ethical answer. Par, Kiven the Olav Alecha Kohanim. He knew every Kohen. You know that's how it worked. Kohanim knew the Kohanim. He knew himself. He knew the Kohanim. Who the Asa? Yes, he was reminded that there's going to be a korban to atone for the sin of his chevra. You know what? He, because of his knowledge of his connection to the other Kohanim, he can influence them to do tshuva. I can influence myself to do tshuva, and I can aspire to inspire others to do tshuva. So yes, there I'm not going to despair when it's brought to my attention that there are things that have to be rectified. Because when something is brought to my attention that things are not the way they should be, but I feel like I have some power to make it better, it's a good thing for me to be aware of that. I'm not going to despair, I'm going to get to work. You know when people despair? When they know about a problem, but they don't have how, they don't know how, or they don't have how to make it better. That's not a good thing. Gavaldik. Since it's about Kohanim, if there's taka Kohen that he knows that something has to get better, he knows that Kohen. And therefore, you know, he has the power to prevail upon him to become better. So when you hear about a fault for which there is a solution, knowing about it is a good thing. However, Bekuli Yisrael, and the Sa'ir didn't only come for the Kohanim. The Sa'ir came for all the Yidden. Lo Yada, you don't know all the Yidden, or at least the Kohen Gadol did not know all the Jewish people. And therefore, he would be unable to get people to better themselves. So then stop, you know about a problem, without any koyach of making a solution that's very frustrating, that would actually make him despair. And Amar Ravina says about those who know each other, right, the power that one has over the other, dafke, because they know them, that's for the good and that's for the bad. That's for the good, meaning if I know you, if you know me, then you can inspire me to do tshuva. That's for the bad, is that if someone is in a position of power, and we're speaking about the policemen over there in the times of Chazal, and some of them were very intrusive in the IRS. If you have a family member that works for the IRS, stay away from them, because they know you. That's the same concept. That's what people say. That if your sister's son is a dayala, dayala means a policeman, is someone that has the power to krich into your bank account, have a chazi b'shuka kamei lo yisachlev, see to it, never walk in front of him in the market. You know, out of sight, out of mind. Don't appear in front of people that have some ability to krich into your kishkas. And limal yusa, the opposite. That when we have a connection to people that are greater than us, dafka, because we're connected to them, do they have a greater ability to prevail over us? Weiter says the Mishnah, Kol Shivas Hayomim, they gave him all foods. And then the Mishnah adds that on Erev Yom Kippur, they gave him only light foods for him not to be sleepy. So now there's many more details that are not mentioned in the Mishnah. And that goes into, again, just like we don't want him to sleep, because if he'll sleep, he might have a seminal emission. We also don't want to give him foods that are mar bezera. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda ben Kusya Omer. Oh, something else. Here he says like this: we don't want for the Kohen Gadol in the middle of the Avodah to have to relieve his bowels. So they would feed him foods on Erev Yom Kippur that would bring him to Karav L'Shilshul. They would loosen his bowels in order for his body, so to say, to get rid of all of the waste. And that would be of help that the next day he wouldn't be busy with that activity. What would they give him? They would give him solatois ubeitzim, flour and eggs. At least in the times of Chazal, they loosen one's bowels. Kedei lemas misoy, in order for him not to need to relieve himself on Yom Kippur. Now, that is a great solution as far as preventing him having to be occupied with going to the bathroom on Yom Kippur. But now, it says the Gemara that Amru Loi, the Chachamim told Rabbi Yehuda, no. You know, that's life. You do something to the body, it's good for A, but it's detrimental for B. Solasois and beitzim, fine flour, and eggs, can never be given to him, because that's something that produces more zera, that the kol shchein, that you should not do it. You're going to bring him to arousal. And indeed, Tanya Sumcha says in the name of Rabbi Meir, you don't give the Kohen Gadol. Now, whether this is on the entire Erev Yom Kippur, many people say this is only in the afternoon of Erev Yom Kippur, and they spoke here in code. You don't give him abi. We'll see soon what abi means. Amri la, no, loy abibi. Not even yayin love, and not even white wine. Now the Gemara is going to take apart, enlighten these abbreviations. Lo yabi, don't give him an esrik, don't give him eggs, and don't give him old wine, good wine. All of these items, they increase the body's natural production of zera. For amri la, lo ababi, what's the additional? Lo yesrik, v'lo beitzim, v'lo basar shaming, not fatty meats, and v'lo yayin yashin. And now, v'yesh oimnim that we had above, afloy yayin lovin, white wine, even if it's not aged, is similar to aged red wine. Benegeya, it stimulates in the body the production of additional semen. Yayin lovin, maybe it's adam lidei tuma, and we're trying to prevent tuma. So if we have to pick and choose, say the chachamim to Rabbi Yehuda, we would rather the Kohen Gadol be more constipated and have to go to the bathroom on Yom Kippur, but to keep him further away from tumas keri. More Tanach Rabbanan, as we spoke out in the introduction about Tuma Zav. So a Zav, if he has this unusual gonorrheal discharge, that as we learned in Nida Daf Lamed Dalid, or Lamed Hey, it's different, the texture is different than normal zera, it leaves the body without an erection, v'chulei v'chulei. So the din is like this, that if there's one such discharge that's called in Chazal seeing, the seeing of it means the Zav saw that his body discharged this type of fluid, then he becomes tamei on the level of a balkeri. But if he sees a second re'iyah, whether it was on the same day or on the next day, then he becomes a zav. However, the second re'iyah may not have come because of an external stimuli. If there was something that we can explain, I know why he saw that type of discharge. And there are 7 things that can bring it about. Excessive eating, or now it's connected, these foods that are mar bezera, he won't have a status of a zav. He'll be a balkeri, but he won't have a status of a zav. And similarly, even if the second one was not because of anything external, but the third one, that's going to make him into a major zav. Not only will he need the 7 clean days, but he will also have to bring the karbanos on the 8th day. He won't have to do so if it came from any external stimulus. So zav, if toilen loy, we look for reasons. Maybe he saw it because b'ma'achol. Ma'achol means maybe he ate too much food. And another reason, v'chol minei ma'achol, there are types of foods that we'll speak again, and that's the connection. The abi, the ababi, the yayin lovin. If he ate those foods and then he had then he had this type of discharge, he won't be rendered into a zav. During the Shivas Nikiyam of a Zav, if he has another discharge, even though the discharge came because of an external stimulus, then the days that he counted will be completely wiped away, and he'll have to start that night again counting 7 days. So it was to the advantage of a Zav during his Shivas Nikiyim not to have any more discharges. So therefore, says Elazar ben Pinchas, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, ein machilin oisei. Make sure during those 7 days, don't give him chag bi. Again, it's all Rashi Tevisin. V'loi gabas. V'loi kol dvarim hamavin l'dei tuma. End of quote. Now let's see what exactly are they referring to. Loi chag bi means don't give him milk. And no gevino, that's the gimel, cheese. V'loi beitza, nor an egg, nor wine. What's gabas? Loi megrisim, juice of pounded beans, right? Megris apul, ubaser shaman, that's the base, fatty meat. And the mem is, gabam, not gabas, gabam, and the mem is murias. Murias is fish fats. And v'loi kol dvarim tuma lasuyamai. That what is that adding is la'asuye hada Tanach Rabbanan, the last line in the Amit. And here another brayso. that speaks about chamisha devarim. There are 5 types of foods or herbs that they they naturally stimulate the body to produce more semen. Mevinas adam ledei tuma. And ve'elohein, hashum, garlic, daf yud ches, amid beis, v'hashach halayim, and cress, v'chalag loiglois is purslane. Today you can Google and see it. Ve'habeitzim, and eggs, and gargir, rocket. This is the rocket herb. And now that we speak about the rocket herb, so the Gemara quotes a pasuk. It says in Melachim, right? Vayetze echad min asad laket oiros. That one person went out to the field to gather oiros. Now oiros means lights. So what product that God created in His amazing world that the Torah refers to as lights? So Tanach Mishmei de Rav Meir, that is the gargir. It's called the rock. The rocket herb is light. Why? So aside of what we learned above, that it stimulates the body's production of zera, it adds light, or it betters your eyesight, it makes your eyes more moist, it adds oil to your eyes. That hamoitzi gargir, if you're walking down and you find a gargir, which is obviously hefker, you can take it. So eat it, it's so healthy, it's that good. If you can't eat it, then at least imagine, just put it over your eyes. That in itself is going to add there is some medicinal benefit to your eye. Amar Rav Papa, that what type of gargir has such a potency? Only bigargira matzurana. Only if you have a rocket that is growing on a boundary of a field, meaning that you don't have other plants adjacent to it. It's isolated from other plantations, because when you plant something right near others, then it doesn't have as many nutrients to schlep from the ground. It loses some of its potency. But a gargir that grow, let's say, in isolation, that's the gargir that it's so good, even if you can't eat it, at least put it over your eyes. Back over here, speaking about foods that are mar bezera. Amarav gidul amarav ach nesoy. If you are a guest in someone's house. Now, this whole industry of hospitality really changed a lot. We're speaking about a time that mamish you would rent a room in someone's house. There would be a tremendous amount of a lack of privacy, and they would know exactly what's going on with you. And if you were to have a seminal emission, it would go on the beddings of the host. It would be uncomfortable. A person should prevent himself from leaving that type of shirayim. So lo yerchel beitzim. Don't eat eggs. And for sure, v'lo yishan b'talisay shel balabayis. Because if you're going to sleep in a talis that the balabayis uses during the day, if the guest will have a seminal emission, which was very common then at night, I'm saying it's very common because by the fact that it says in Pirkei Yavis that from the 10 miracles that happened in the Beis HaMikdash, that v'lo keri the kohen gadol b'yom HaKippurim, people learn the Mishnah, they say, what's the nes? It never happened to them. It must be that the body was stronger then, enough that it was a common thing that people had nocturnal seminal emissions, and therefore, again, it's not comfortable for you a person is going to leave their zera on a talis that the balabas uses during the day. Weiter. Now we're learning about something that's very controversial. I'm very happy that we have very little amount of time, but let's go. A yid can only have sexual relations with a woman in a kosher marriage. And when a person is not married, or if a person travels without their wife, then they are, so to say, more subject, right, to a degree of temptation than a yid that's traveling with his wife. That's the way of the world. So we're going to speak about certain great Amoraim that when they went on a trip, they would marry a local woman for the short amount of time that they were there, and then they would right away divorce them. So it was, don't forget, this is before the Chedem de Rabbeinu Gershon. A man then was allowed to have 2 wives at the same time. This was obviously with the knowledge and consent of your current wife. If not, it's not moral. We're speaking about halacha. So Narvos then, these big tzaddikim, they didn't want to be in a place for a short amount of time out of marriage or without their wife being with them. So they would marry a local woman. So the Gemara says that Afki Mikla the Darshish, when he would travel to Darshish, probably Darshish was relatively far from where he lived. So Machris, he would announce, Man havya liyoma, who would like to be my wife for the day? Whether it was for 1 day, whether it was for 2 days or 3 days, knows while he was there, he was kedusha, halachic kedushin and halachic nesuyin, and then when he would leave, he would give her a get. And similarly, we find the same thing with Rav Nachman. That Rav Nachman, Kad Mikla, when he would travel to the city called Shin, L'Shechantzif, he also was machlis, he would announce, Man havi Eliyahu, who would be my wife for the day? Today the Gemara, hold on. But didn't we learn, V'hatanya Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Lo yisa adam isha b'medina zu v'yelech v'yisa isha b'medina acheres. A person should not have 2 wives. Again, this is at the time that you were in principle allowed to have 2 wives at the same time, but make sure that they are not living in 2 different countries. Because these 2 families will not know each other. And that might lead that siblings will marry each other because they don't know, they share the same father. Perhaps the children from the 2 marriages, right, will unknowingly meet each